All right. Hey, everybody. We are here with Megan. Megan is a grad, and we're so excited to do our very first grad spotlight with her and just talk to her about her experience through Pretty Focused and what she has learned over the last, gosh, Megan, how long has it been? When did you join?
I joined, I think it was back in December of 2022.
Okay, so we're going to see how much she has learned and how much she has grown over the last couple of years. So, you joined in December 22. Why don't you tell us a little bit about before you joined? Like, how did you hear about Pretty Focused and what made you decide to actually join?
hmm I used to live abroad for a few years and I met someone there where we used to hang out. And then when we both moved back to America, we kind of reconnected and we're seeing, what each of us were up to. Because we both were teachers abroad. So we
Mhm.
were seeing, oh, did you go back to teaching? Did you kind of switch gears? We kind of touched base and she was telling me how she actually transitioned into doing food photography full time. And I was like, what do you mean food photography? What is that? And then she kind of explained a little bit the course and explained to like how when you go look for recipes on Pinterest, it's pictures that corresponds with that, where I'm like, oh, okay, like I didn't even know that was a thing. And then she sent me some information about the course and I looked it up and I'm like, oh wow, that's amazing. Like I can actually learn how to do food photography because I've done weddings in the past, engagement shoots,
Mhm.
things like that in college. And then when she presented this to me, I'm like, oh, I feel like that's something that I would enjoy doing and really love to learn. So, yeah, I ended up signing up not too long after. And then, yeah, now I'm here and I'm officially graduated.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. So, if when you were abroad, what were you doing?
Teaching English as a second language,
Okay, where were you? Where did that take you?
Taiwan.
Okay, very cool. So that's where you the two of you met.
hmm
And so are you still teaching now? What does life look like for you now?
So right now I kind of switched gears a little bit. So when I moved back to the US, I did go back to teaching because that's what I was doing beforehand. And like I said too, in college I didn't go back to that yet, but in college I actually studied art and design, so I did focus a little bit in photography. I just had a lot of experience with kids and kind of wanted to have a double major just so that way I had some experience and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I came back here, I started teaching and then I kind of transitioned into my current role. So now I'm a supervisor at an early intervention program for the county I
Okay.
live in.
Okay.
Still doing that and then still doing engagement shoots on the side, family shoots, and then also focusing still on my food photography just so I don't lose any of the skills I learned and can freshen up, things that I've been doing and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are working in early intervention right now. You are doing portraits, like you are pursuing food. Where do you want to take photography? Like when you look at your future, where do you see photography fitting in, with education?
hmm I feel like my goal that I've always had for quite a long time was being able to fully transition into doing photography full time.
Okay.
Um, so that was my original plan, even out of college, doing more weddings, portraits, things like that. But that's where when I came across Pretty Focus and I learned more of the flexibility and especially, being able to work out of the comfort of my own home in my own little studio that I have in our basement. It's just, I feel like it just opened up so many more opportunities where I still offer engagement shoots and things like that just because it's more so friends or friends of friends and family. But I feel like my main goal that I would like to officially do full time and transition out of early intervention would be specifically food photography, just because, I personally, I don't have kids yet, but my boyfriend and I plan to, in the near future. So, and I know hearing from other grads how they're able to coordinate, taking care of their kiddos at home, and doing this full time. And I
Yeah.
feel, especially with my job now, like I have great time management skills where I'm like, all right, I could do this in the future when we one day have kids and be able to do this full time without, the hassle of traveling all the way to go to weddings and then all that time that takes away from weekends and things like that. So I feel like I've been able to kind of open and broaden my mind to like opportunities I'd be able to get while being able to still live my life how I'd like to based off the flexibility and availability.
Yeah. I think that this industry has just opened up so many doors and opportunities for people to
Mhm.
be able to live that life of freedom and flexibility, and that you don't have to do the 9 to 5. Like you don't have to do it. Like there are so many more opportunities out there for people now.
Mhm.
And I mean, growing up, my parents worked Monday through Friday, right? That is what they did. They worked Monday through Friday. We had Saturdays and Sundays off. And my mom was a teacher. My dad worked for an engineering company. And so that was life. And now that we are in like this new age of technology and social media, as much as we like have a love-hate relationship with social media, the opportunities that have just opened up for so many people. Like you now have a choice. And I love that you're looking ahead to your future and planning and saying like, I have a choice. Like I want to be, when I have kids, I want to be able to be there. I want to have the freedom and flexibility to raise my family how and where I want to. And I think that that ultimate freedom is priceless, really.
Mhm. Yeah.
It really is. So let's take a step back to the course, because like you knew how to use a camera because you were doing portraits and weddings, right?
Mhm.
What what experience did you have with food?
I had absolutely none. I like I would usually take pictures in portrait mode on my camera of food. Never because I'm a big foodie. I lived in Chicago for 7 years, so my family and I
Yeah.
would always go visit all the restaurants, and I would be the one who would be responsible taking pictures of the food. But I
Yeah.
just never even knew or really understood how photographers get pictures of the foods that you see in magazines and Pinterest and things like that. And I feel like during the course, I learned a whole different new perspective and kind of creativity too that you can put into it. Where, I've seen some people post where they're like we learned a lot about like reflectors to bounce off light and then how to create other different types of light. Or because I shoot using artificial light. So,
Yep.
um, that was also something that was completely new to me because I've used flash for weddings and things like that. But I felt like I just learned so much with being more in control of what I can do with the light, where, obviously it's different from posing people. Whereas
Yeah.
with food now, it's like, it's very easy to pose them because you don't have to tell them what to do. You don't have to make them do any like, fun little jokes to each other to get that, candid moment. So yeah, I feel like I've learned so much that I could talk about it for so long.
Yeah. And they're like, no grumpy dads or
Oh, yeah,
grandpas.
it's always the dads. I know. The dads and the husbands are like, all right, I think we got enough. And it's like, oh,
Oh no, we
actually.
really didn't, because you need to smile just a little bit more. Yep.
I know. I actually just did a family shoot this past weekend, and the dad was like, all right. And I just had to like kind of, because, I'm very like open. Well, what's the word? I feel like I'm very outgoing where I can kind of talk to anyone where, I
Yeah.
kind of just joke around. I'm like, you got it. Like, you've already been doing so good, and making like good comments like, oh, you look so handsome. Like, look at, so that way I try to get the like candid Kodak moment. So,
Sure.
not so, um, what's the word? Uh,
Posed.
Posed,
So
yes, yes.
yeah.
Whereas food
I
photography
love
obviously
that.
is a little bit different,
I know.
which
You're like talking to that cupcake. Come on, you can do it.
I know, yeah, right.
I'm like talking to myself at that point. Like I'm giving myself a pep talk. You can do it. Come on, Melody. You can do it.
I know, that's why I love too. It's like, okay, I don't have to give any direction or guidance or like, it's just okay. I just take my hand, I move it, or I have to use like a tool to hold something up where I'm like, all right, I can work with this. Like this is
Yeah.
much more easier and less energy too. Cause I feel like too, as a photographer doing family shoots, it's like you got to constantly like, all right, guys, like, let's go. You're almost like a little cheerleader. Whereas doing food, it's like,
Oh,
I can take a step back and just, if I can't figure something out or how I want to set up, it's like I just take a deep breath and I'm like, all right, well, let's see other ways I can do this. So that way I have
yeah.
like different options to choose from. So
Yeah. I mean, the emotional like energy for sessions where because I mean, they're going to hopefully match your energy, right? That's kind of, have you seen that reel where you're like trying to get my husband to match my energy or whatever. And you walk into the room and you're all excited and they're like, what? Like, and will they, that's like how you are as a portrait photographer. It's
Yes.
like, you've got to come 100%,
Mhm.
110%, and you've got to set the tone. You have to set the energy for your shoot.
Yes.
So you can get those smiles, so you can make them feel relaxed, but then at the same time, if they're not coming, if they're not meeting you, then you really have to obviously quickly adjust,
Yep.
right? But it's a lot of emotional reading. You got to be able to read people. Of course, you want them to feel comfortable.
Mhm.
There's a lot sitting on your board. I'm looking at your photos now, and something tells me you didn't have to go through all of those ups and downs, right?
Oh yeah, nope, not at all.
I love it so much. So you came in knowing photography already. Had already been using your camera. So we talked about, you learned a lot about food, but I know there's a lot of people who wonder, well, I already have photography experience. Like, can I just skip ahead to the Buyers Club, or can I just skip ahead to the end? Because I already know how to use my camera.
Mhm.
And so we always tell them, no, you can't skip ahead to the front of the line because you already know this, because there's so much more. This is a different niche of photography. So can you maybe compare and contrast portrait photography to food photography as far as like this, like maybe the skill and the technical aspect?
Mhm. I would say one of the main things I took away from learning food photography, specifically through Pretty Focus, was more composition, where I feel like with people like doing portrait photography, I had a different insights. I kind of knew a little bit about focal point, like where to
Mhm.
stand, things like that. But specifically with food, along with the lenses to use, because especially when I did weddings, I used macro lenses for rings and things like that. But I never really thought, oh, like, could that be used for food? And I feel like that's something that I kind of learned too throughout the course, where just positioning where you're holding your camera, just because I'm trying to think too of like the main things that I took away that I did not know about food photography, where I feel like the angles of like I don't remember, the 45 where you stand to kind of look down, and then overhead using a C stand. I mean, I've never used a C stand before. So that was also like, what is this thing? And can I fully trust my camera that's
Yeah.
half my life just, hanging above my hot lasagna that I could potentially fall into? So yeah, I feel like it was just learning a whole different dynamic, where I felt that way too going into the course, where I'm like, all right, well, I already have a good kind of idea of how to use my camera. Like, can I just skip ahead and just kind of just go into the Buyers Club? But honestly, I'm very happy that I was pushed to continue with more practice shoots, just because, obviously, like anyone else too, I kind of felt like defeated. I'm like, all right, like, I just can't get this. If I was like recommended to do another shoot to focus on something else, I was always
Mhm.
kind of down a little bit, like, what am I doing wrong? But I always, like, especially with the community and Pretty Focus, like, everyone's very confident in you and like showing that they care, and they're like, you can do it, just keep doing it. And I had to keep reminding myself, like, all right, like, I gotta finish. I gotta like finish what I started, and then
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like just continuing to get that additional like support and guidance just really helped guide me in the right direction. Because if you were to see the picture that I took from my first homework assignment to now my portfolio, it's like a complete day and night difference, where it's like, yeah, just because I knew how to use my camera at the beginning, it's like, I feel like I just learned a whole different kind of view and mindset of how to take pictures.
So on the video of this podcast that you can watch on YouTube, we have a photo of her before and after. So make sure you head over to YouTube and watch that so you can see her before and after photos. But I have your before and after photos right here. And it's crazy to me to see the difference here. What do you think whenever you see these two photos side by side?
I mean, I feel like I definitely noticed the kind of the additional white space I had in the first one with the cupcakes in the background, where I could have got a little bit closer, and especially kind of introducing more of that yumminess, like whereas the drizzle of the caramel on the ice cream really kind of, I feel like, guides people's eyes to where to look, along with filling that white space in the background. Because as you can see, like the difference between the left picture, I have nothing in the background, it's just emptiness and just the wall, whereas the right side, it's like, okay, let's incorporate some ingredients, let's put in some apples and the pan that the apple crisp came in. So it's all just, I felt like it was more so the little things for me that I was learning, like, oh, I didn't even realize, like, I just wanted to get pictures of the cupcakes and add in a few, added in like a little baby's breath plant and then the sprinkles. But yeah, it's like more focusing on, now this is my model. The food is my model. I don't have people I can just make laugh and have them move around and just, crop that in. It's just, yeah, thinking about little details like that.
Well, the photo on the left, the photo on the right versus the left, the apple crisp and the ice cream is truly, it's center smack dab in the middle of the photo.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very, very focused on the food. And like you said, the caramel drizzle, your eyes just go down. You just follow that drizzle down to the top of the ice cream, and you've got the ice cream just starting to slowly melt on top of the apple crisp. And you can see the chunks of apple. My mouth is watering. You can see the crisp, the cinnamon, and everything. And so you've really done a great job just in one photo, telling the story of this recipe, right? Mm-hmm. And showing readers what they can expect from this recipe. And so the difference between these two photos is night and day. And I can see on the photo on the left a little bit of like the wedding, you know what I mean? A little bit like, cause you're doing the wedding details, and you have the framing with the baby's breath and the sprinkles in the foreground. And you can definitely have pictures where you have, things in the foreground, but we talk about composition wise centering that main subject in the photo. And so when I look at the cupcakes, the one on the right is where the focus is landing, but it's not center. And so because of that, our eyes still are not sure, what we're looking at, and making sure that food item is centered in the photo, which I don't know if you've had conversations with photographers. I had a conversation with one guy, and he was like, centering, I hate centering composition. And I'm like, well, okay, it depends on what you're photographing, because this is actually a very, very strong form of composition and is very necessary in food blog photography.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I feel like yeah, especially I feel like too with this. So the first picture too, I was using a different lens. So I wasn't using the macro lens with the oh my goodness, what is the name of that recipe? I want to say salted caramel, but it wasn't salted. Apple crisp.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There you go. So yeah, I feel like too, I just learned like different techniques in that, like where we were talking about wedding too, like, the details for like the rings and all that, you use the macro, but it's like with food, I didn't think, oh, I could also use that here too. Like getting kind of the crisp shot and the up close. So this is like, you can see on the picture on the right, like that's my main focus. That's what we're looking at. And what's in the background, oh, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I see that. Whereas the left, it's like, okay, where is my eye landing? Like, where should I be looking? Why? Because I feel like now, even just looking at it, I mean, I've been staring at it for a few minutes now, but anyway, looking at it, it's like, I feel like my eye should land on the middle cupcake, where obviously it doesn't. It's like, okay, why? And it just seems very lost. Like nothing is, like I said, with the white space in the background, it's just, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like should have made make this a little bit brighter too, where I learned some new editing techniques too with food photography that I also didn't really learn from when I was editing for weddings and things like that.
Awesome. Tell me what you learned. What were some of
I
those
definitely
things?
learned more about white, which I feel like with weddings and things, white balance was definitely something to focus on, but with food specifically, especially depending on what you're making, because I
Mhm.
learned like lasagna, for example, with the red, and then thinking of the like what props you're going to use. I quickly learned using wood was not my friend, just because when it comes to editing it was very challenging, where okay, this wood is a little bit darker compared to the food, and then kind of balancing the white balance throughout my photos. And then I feel like another thing too I learned was the exposure for all my photos, just because when you're doing weddings and portraits, you can start at 1 o'clock and it's bright and beautiful out. And then later the sun goes down and it's darker. And it's like, okay, well, it's not, I felt like with editing for a specific recipe, I learned everything needs to kind of stay the same, because you can definitely see the difference if you have the picture side by side, where it's like, wait, why is that one darker than the one on the right? This is the same recipe, where that's where I learned that artificial light, where okay, I'm in control, like it's always going to stay this setting, this light, don't have to worry about the sun going down or going up or anything like that. It's you're
Yep.
in full control. So
Yep.
yeah.
There's a reason why they call them light chasers, right? Where you're chasing the light. Now, I'm still a light chaser because I still photograph natural light all I was gonna say all day long, but no, not all day long.
Mhm.
That wouldn't be a true statement, but I still like natural light photography.
Mhm.
But you are absolutely right in the fact that you have full control over everything. And so artificial light, if you are, considering going through the course and you're like, well, I'm working full time, when am I
Mhm.
going to photograph? And so this is where using artificial light gives you that ultimate freedom. I
Yes.
think, yeah.
I was gonna say too, if I also, one of the reasons too I wanted to do artificial light was because of that fact too, that I was working full time, because I'd come home at 5 o'clock, and yeah, especially now at daylight savings, it's pitch black out, where I'm like, all right, well, the only time I have to shoot is on weekends, or if I
Right.
get up super early in the morning. So that's kind of why I wanted to go that route, and also just so that way I can learn kind of a new way to photograph, because I love that. I also learned in the artificial course through Pretty Focus how to navigate and use artificial light too. And I feel like I would still like to do natural light as well. It's just with our house, there's not, the room I'm in right now would really be the only option. And this is our office that gets like the best light. And there would not be enough room for my studio in this.
Yeah.
Our next house, that's where I would love to have a room that's level, because right now I'm in the basement for my studio. So
Oh,
that's where
yeah.
I really, yeah, there's no light at all down there except for two little windows. So I really rely on the artificial for that purpose.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So as you've gone through, I mean, your photos are just beautiful to see from where you were when you started at module 3 homework to your portfolio. I just get so excited whenever I see before and after photos. I love it. How did the coaching help you? You talked about like a lot of the technical stuff that you learned. How did coaches come alongside and support you?
I absolutely loved getting feedback from coaches. I feel like too, I'm a very direct person too, like especially, if anyone has any trouble with anything, I kind of just like to be upfront about it. So rather
Mhm.
than kind of beating around the bush. And I feel like I was able to get that direct, but also like very nice feedback. It wasn't like they were bashing my work, like, oh, this isn't good or anything like that. It was always pointing out, I love that it was pointing out the positives of my work, like, oh, I really like how you did this. And then, especially the way I work too, I like to see kind of bullet points of things. So I love that they gave suggestions on, oh, maybe next time try to position your camera this way, or move the brownie over here, and kind of push everything together. So I really liked the kind of directness of feedback, where it really kind of guided you in a positive way, where it's like, okay, this is something that I can work on. And this is something that I'm still learning in the course too. Cause there's so many, like I said before too, like there's so many new things that I learned throughout the course where I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that was like something I should be focusing on. So yeah, I feel like it was just, and then I just love how it always, they kind of wrapped it up too with like, you're almost there. Like you're doing so good. It's like that really, cause like I said earlier too, it's just, I was kind of just getting down where I'm like, oh, I have to do another practice shoot. Like, why? Like, is this good enough? Like, you know, and it was just also
Mm,
like on me too, because that's just how I am. I'm like, I feel like I'm doing a good job. Like, what is it? And then I just felt like it was just continuing to like push me, like, you're almost there, you're doing it, like, just keep up the good work. And I just kept telling myself, like I said, I started this course, like, I need to finish it. I need to learn what I think I haven't, like, you know, I felt like I kind of knew most of what I was getting told, but I just loved how they point out all the positive things because it's also like I feel like a lot of people too need to be like reassured, like, you know, I'm feeling defeated, like why can't I do this? But then they're like, but you did this, and this, like that's amazing. It's like, yeah, wow, yeah, I guess, you know, something that might seem little to me seems big to someone else where it's like, oh yeah, I guess that was something that I learned from my last homework assignment that I didn't do before. So it was really mind opening to me where
good.
I always look forward to the feedback and then hearing more. Like when I had follow up questions, they'd clarify it to me where I'm like, okay, I get it. Now I have what the tools that I need for my next shoot.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are not sure how to handle or receive feedback. You
Yes.
know, you think that you of course we live in a digital world, so everything is online and you don't get a chance to see their facial expressions. You know what I mean? You don't get a chance to hear their tone of voice as they're giving it. And so giving feedback digitally and receiving it, it can be a little challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It's something that our team is very, very aware of. And actually, we are going through together a book called Digital Body Language. So I've talked about it before, where it just talks about how your written responses are received in just different ways that you can make sure that you come across the way you're supposed to. So if you've never read that book, I would highly recommend it.
Hmm.
Um, it's a really, really good book, especially with the digital age that we're living in.
Yeah.
But um, receiving feedback, you also have to remember that feedback doesn't mean you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it doesn't mean you've done something wrong. And it doesn't mean you in our context, our coaches are looking for an area to help you push the needle forward. And so they're going to point out areas where you can grow and you can, improve on. And so now that you're on the other side of it, when you look back at those times where you were maybe feeling a little frustrated, maybe feeling a little defeated, do you look back and think that was overkill, or do you look back and think, no, I get it?
I definitely, now I get it. That's, yeah. Cause I understand. Yeah. I completely agree with you. It's just when people read things, yeah, it's like, how are they taking it? Are they reading in their head? Like, did she say it? Because, you know, we don't know how they're reacting. We don't know what their expression is. We're just reading words off a screen where it's like, okay, how should I take that? Like, you know,
Mhm.
did they mean it in a good way? Did they mean it in a bad way? Where, oh yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah. You can be like so quick. Some people can just be so quick to take offense. Like,
Mhm.
and it's like, nope, that's not how it was intended. So it's like always give people the benefit of the doubt. You always want to give people the benefit of the doubt. And so our coaches, I think, do a good job at making sure that people are encouraged in every post, that they feel supported in every post, but that they have a really good, strong takeaway, because we know every single person who walks through our doors invested to be there. Do you know what
Mhm.
I mean? And so we are going to make sure they get the curriculum and the coaching that they need, right?
Yes.
To help you get from A to Z, because you enrolled so that you can start your own food photography business and connect with potential clients. Like that's the goal. That's your goal.
Mhm.
And so we're going to help you get there. We're going to do everything that we can in our power to do that. And so giving direct feedback in a kind and supportive way is something that we do. And did you ever take any other photography courses? Did you do any portrait photography, or are you like self-taught?
So I took in college, I minored in photography. So I took,
Okay.
like I took a class on how to learn Lightroom and then the basics of my
Yeah.
camera. But the other ones are more like graphic design classes that I took. So yeah, it was kind of just basic knowledge of learning how to use your camera that I took my freshman year. But other than that, that was really the only photography class I took. And then I kind of afterwards just self-taught other
Yeah.
different, like, how to take picture, like where to stand, kind of referencing to things I'd see online for engagement pictures, and just kind of researching on my own, like, how do I take candid moments without posing people? So, I learned like from doing my own research, like, oh, okay, like I should have them like do something silly, like sing the alphabet that, encourages them to naturally laugh so I can get a good Kodak moment.
Right.
So yeah, I feel like that was kind of self-taught. But yeah, the only official course I've done was Pretty Focused. And then, like I said, the 2 classes I took in college.
Can I ask how like the feedback, like the curriculum and the feedback and Pretty Focused compared to the college classes?
I feel like I would say, because my college class, I feel like I graduated college so long ago. I feel so old now. I'm like, God, that was almost, I think 10 years ago now. I don't even remember. But yeah, I felt like Pretty Focused was more focused on me and my work. Whereas college, it was, we all got to show one picture we did over the weekend and everyone gave 2 comments about it. And then it was like, okay, on to the next one. Where I feel like in Pretty Focus, it was more detailed responses, where like I loved whenever I posted my homework and I'm like, oh, like that was really the only time I went on Facebook was to refresh and see if I got a notification to see someone comments on it. So I'm like, oh, like I love hearing all the different, because I love too that it's always a different coach. It's not always the same one. So you're getting different perspectives, different insights, especially different like professional opinions, because they're full-time food
Yeah,
photographers. So
they
they
are.
know what
Yeah.
they're talking about. So yeah, I love that I was able to kind of hear different thoughts and like different feedback for different creative minds. So yeah, and I just love that the feedback was like specifically towards all my work as a whole, where it's like, oh, you did this in this picture, but this one you did that one. Where yeah, I felt like the feedback was very helpful in so many different ways, not even just like about which picture it was, but just about like future pictures. Or, for example, like I learned lasagna, for example. I know that was like one of my practice shoots where I shot the picture like right as it came out of the oven for that cheese pull. And then for the rest of the shoot, I just kind of let it hang out, where obviously that reflected in my pictures and it showed that my lasagna was very dry looking. So like that was something I took away from that, where it's like, okay, I know I need to shoot it right away while it's still nice and hot, because once you let it sit there, the longer it's gonna get dry and
Yep.
not in your pictures. Where I'm like, okay, well, this is something I learned too, because I wouldn't
Yeah.
not doing portrait photography, because it's not like people sit there and get crispy looking. It's just like it's a whole different
Yeah.
dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. There's so many different little things to learn, and I feel like the coaching is it's like a good support to the curriculum, because if you were to put all of those things into a curriculum, I'd still be recording videos, you know what I mean? Like it would be endless, all of the things. Now, step number 1, make sure that you don't leave the lasagna out for too long, because there's just so much. There's so much to know and to keep learning and to communicate. And that's really where our coaches come in and provide that additional feedback, and you continue to learn through their feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And they reinforce the curriculum and they add to it with those types of things, those types of tips. and their own experience, because they are still actively working with clients. Like, they're all actively working. They're very, very busy.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that I think is great that I'm just so thankful for them, because I know that how busy they are, and they still stop everything on the one day that they coach to be able to pour into and give feedback to other people. And so that's how they see it, is like they're pouring into other people. That's how I see it, is that they are helping students create that life of freedom and flexibility that they want, because they know, they've tasted, they have seen how good it is, and they just want everybody else to experience it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree.
So for somebody who's thinking about joining Pretty Focused, and maybe they are coming from the portrait world and are wondering if I should kind of venture into food photography. Maybe they're wanting to diversify their income, or they're wanting to like stop like working on the weekends, because
Mm-hmm.
you got a wedding on Saturday and then on Sunday it's recuperating, right? And then you go back to work on Monday. And so there's really not a lot of rest there. But what would you say to them if they're thinking about joining Pretty Focused?
I would say definitely, I would highly recommend doing it, just because I feel like too, and you can always try it out. And if you realize like going through the course, like this is just not for me, I would rather take pictures of people and do that more. And that's where it comes with like learning about the flexibility of this role, like being a full-time food photographer, and you hear like all the good things where, oh wow, like I can really have more free time to myself and my family, where like you said earlier, like with weekends, like if you're doing weddings, well that's your weekend is weddings, like no family time. Whereas food, you can kind of be flexible, if your kiddo's taking a nap, you can do a shoot then. If you can spend time with them on the weekend and then just kind of do food during the week. I feel like it's just a different, like everyone has a different perspective of things and different kind of thing that they take away, where it's like, okay, because if some people really struggle with like artificial light and things like that. Because I will say, when I started the course, I officially purchased it in December of 2022, I think is when it was, but I didn't actually officially start until I think it was like 4 or 5 months later, just because I knew, like thinking about, I knew I wanted to go through this course, finish it, and master food photography and learn it in a way that I haven't learned before. And I knew of the options of, okay, you can do natural light or artificial light, and especially seeing that the opportunity was given to take a class through Pretty Focus with artificial light, I'm like, oh great, like I can
Yeah.
also learn how to do this. So like I feel like you're also learning so much more than just food photography. Like if I learned artificial light in this course, like I didn't know how to do that before. That is not something, I mean, I could have tried to self teach myself, but I'm also more hands-on, and like I said, I need people to like tell me what to do in that aspect.
Yep.
So yeah, I feel like it was just a real eye opener, where I took away kind of all these new things that I learned. And especially, when I chose that I wanted to go into the course doing artificial light, okay, well, that's going to cost a little bit more on my end, because then I have to purchase, like
Sure.
the light box, the light, all of those other little things where, they add up. So that's why it kind of took me a little bit longer to officially start, just because,
Yeah,
um,
that makes
you know,
sense.
yeah. So, yeah, I feel like, and it's great that it's kind of at your own pace too. It's not like, all right,
Mhm.
deadline, like homework assignment number one is due in a week, and everyone's like, like, I love that aspect of it too, where it was kind of like go at your own pace and own, where you're at financially. And that's where I
Yep.
kind of step back, and I'm like, all right, I know I'm going to need a few months to save up some money and, purchase those Black Friday deals they got going on and things like that. And yeah, I feel like it's just really focusing on like what your goal is and what you want to focus on. And that was something
Mhm.
that I knew starting the course. I'm going to focus on artificial light, and I'm going to stick with that, because once I learn that, I'll be able to go into doing natural light if I ever wanted to in the future, like no problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that. I love that you were able to start off with that. Um, start off with that skill set, right away from the very, very beginning, you know, and your photos are just beautiful. I'm still looking at the caramel drizzling, and I just love the shine. And so you do artificial light very, very well.
Thank you.
So you've done a really great job with that. So if somebody's thinking about it, they come to you and they talk to you about, they say like, hey, what is Pretty Focus? Because you went to somebody yourself
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, what is this? So if somebody were to come to you and they're like, okay, wait, what is Pretty Focused? Like, what would you tell them?
I feel like I would just say nothing but positive things about what a great community
Mm,
it is. Like, I mean, obviously, it is, I kind of look at it too as like kind of like school. Pretty Focus is like a course where they offer you like all these lessons on how to learn how to do things. So I would say like the two things is like it's kind of like a side course for school, like outside, obviously not school, but like side
mhm.
um, thing like that. And then I feel like the community is just, I really focus on the community aspect of it because I feel like, especially when I went through the course and I was getting feedback where, like I said, I felt defeated, where I'm like, oh, like I thought I was so close, but just almost there. And you just, not even like, obviously coaches are giving you feedback, but then you write a comment, because I was very open where I was like, oh, like, I just don't know what I'm doing, like, kind of things like that, where, additional people in Pretty Focus would comment on it who are also in my shoes and who were also, maybe they were one or two homework assignments ahead or behind me, where they're like, you got it, like, you're almost there, like, I was there too. And it's just, I feel
Yep.
like it's also just so reassuring, like, what a great and positive community it is, because everyone really does, like, I can feel like feed off each other, compliment each other. It's just like an ongoing,
I know.
yeah, it's just like nothing but positive things where, yeah, I feel like it's just a constant, like, you got this, like, just keep going.
Yeah, I am so proud of the Pretty Focused community. Like, every time somebody comes in and they talk about how it's their favorite aspect and it's their favorite thing, like, it just makes me well with pride, because the people inside of our community are just so special. And
Mhm.
I mean, I know I'm biased. I know I'm a little bit biased, but have you ever been a part of a community like Pretty Focused before?
No, not at all. I mean, I feel like, yeah, no, it's just, I feel like I said, I'm not really like on social media that much. Like the only thing I'm really on a lot is Instagram, where that is just, you see all these different things that people post where most of it's negative, or I don't know. I feel like Pretty Focused, it's never negative. It's always like, and if someone does post something negative, like when I say negative, I mean like when I post about myself, like, oh, like I'm just not there. I just don't know what I'm doing wrong. Like, kind of just taking myself out. It's just like everyone's there to turn your frown upside down. It's like, I honestly feel like, because, I feel like I had to do, I don't even remember off the top of my head, like 15 practice shoots or something like that before I
Mhm.
could start working on portfolio. So there's that
Yep.
recommendation of at least, I don't know how
It's
many
at
it was.
least 15. Yeah.
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 Yeah. But I know I got asked to do additional ones where I'm like, oh, like I thought I got it, like what am I missing? But it's like, no, they're not, like, no one's telling you to keep doing it because they want you to fail. They want you to succeed, because once you graduate and you're on your own, like, you're not going to get that feedback unless it's from a client, where, you don't want them to give you negative feedback, because then you potentially lose that client, where it's like, oh, okay, like they didn't, I did something
Yeah.
wrong with how I set up my camera or something like that, where, like, it's just always this community that you can go back to too, to,
Mhm.
if you want follow-ups on like a new portfolio that you put together, you're going to have it, and you're going to,
Absolutely.
yeah. So yeah, it's been a great process and a great community.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure talking with you, hearing your experience with portraits and now with food. Your work is absolutely stunning. And I can't wait to see where this venture takes you. So thank you for being with us today, and we'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.